Ні, ми почнемо з мене, я просто зараз хочу. Да, ми почнемо з вас. От, потім Деревянка і будеш третій. Дякую. Ми вже починаємо.
Okay, we start. Just give me a sign that we are ready to translate. Yes, I see that we are ready. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. We start our regular press conference organized by the Free Crimea Foundation and the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and our today's topic is Ignorance as Darkness, Education in the Occupied Crimea. We have intentionally chosen this quotation from the Russian classic in order to depict the situation in the education sphere. As far as I remember, this is our third press conference where we talk about this situation in education. Today it happens practically on the eve of the Day of Knowledge, the 1st of September, when the academic school year has to start on the territory of the occupied Crimea and Sevastopol. We have invited very interesting expert speakers who will join in our discussion after we present our infographics. Please put it on the screens. Yeah, it is rather long today, however. In the dark ages, you can see the comparison of the education with the education before the occupation, which is marked with the Ukrainian flag, and after the occupation. Can you bring the slide back? Yes. The education in the state language by the moment of annexation in 2014 involved 7.3% of the Ukrainian students there. There were 7 schools in the cities and no Ukrainian language schools in rural areas. The Ukrainian language was compulsory for learning in all the schools in the Crimea and Sevastopol. At the moment of annexation, there were higher educational establishments of grades 3 and 4 in Crimea, 22, and 33 in Crimea and 22 in Sevastopol. After the annexation, we see terrible figures. We see that at the moment, out of 586 schools of the peninsula and Sevastopol, there's no Ukrainian language schools. So there's 0 Ukrainian language schools in Crimea. Besides, we see that as a result of the previous school year, the situation is like this: 14,500 people graduated from schools, and 1,040 school children have went through the single state examination in Russian language, and this is now the official statistics from the Ministry of Education. 963 students joined Ukrainian universities who hail from the territory of Crimea, and out of them 207 are already studying according to the bachelor's program. 418 are on the free form of education, 545 are on paid education. And here you see the quotation from the Minister of Education, Quit, who says that Ukraine does not recognize Crimea Russian territory, and we do not recognize the documents with the stamps of the so-called Crimean Republic or the so-called Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics. He said that they will address MPs and the government. You know that the entering of graduates from Crimea became one of the hot issues in the public discussion, and Andriy Shchekun was one of the experts who actively participated in the discussion. There was a rather huge number of remarks and criticisms as far as the policy of the Ministry of Science and Education is concerned. We said that they should make the entering to Ukrainian universities for Crimeans as simple as possible. And we see that in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, there are 0 schools with the Ukrainian language of education, but what is the situation in other countries where there's a huge Ukrainian diaspora? In Australia, 35,000 ethnic Ukrainians live, and they have 15 Ukrainian schools. On average, 1 school for 2,000 Ukrainians. And if we count kids, then of course the proportion is higher. For 2,020,000 Ukrainians in Argentina, they have 77 schools, 12 schools in Brazil, and for 150,000 Ukrainians in Slovakia, 156 Ukrainian schools on the territory of Slovak Republic. Besides, Sergei Kvit, whom I already quoted here, recently said that all the Crimeans and those who applied from the so-called DNR and LNR could get Ukrainian certificates by going through exams, tests by correspondence, and also there's an opportunity for school students in Crimea to study at schools in Kherson region. But just imagine this situation. When the kids have to go there, it's good when they have relatives there and when they have where to stay, but just imagine that people at this age go there, they are not able to solve their everyday life problems and they still have to learn. So the procedure is rather complicated. We'll try to talk about the ways to solve it during our roundtable, and Inna Solson, who is the first Deputy Minister of Education and Science, has said that the only option today is being associated with a school in Ukraine and passing through the tests there. Last year the situation was different because last year the annexation happened 2 months before the end of the school year. So last year the situation was simpler than today. And now I give the floor to Oleg Derevyanko, who is Deputy Head of Education and Science Ministry of Ukraine, and he's head of the personnel department of the apparatus of the ministry.
Thank you, Taras, for this event, because we had a different press conference. We understand that we need many meetings in order to move forward. We need to have a lot of attention to that from the ministry. We accept all the criticism. We agree that we failed to do what we could have done, but at the same time, we believe that it's not so much about statistical data, but it's about how to move forward the situation with Crimea, and we need to consider Crimea separately from DNR and LNR, but I believe that's the situation for many years. We need to develop the humanitarian strategy of Ukraine as a soft power so that the generations of children who are in Crimea, who will be growing up, so that we can pull them into Ukrainian space, so that children later come here. If you imagine that children have very progressive parents who are Russian, pro-Russian, and children want to go to Europe, and they can go to internet cafe and study online somewhere in European university, then we can imagine that very soon there will be no internet cafes in Crimea. And that is worse than we had the situation in the worst Soviet times. And it's like the US were trying to encourage Soviet children to go abroad to study. That is similar, and I believe that we need to invite everyone, experts, specialists, people from Crimea, not from Crimea, to look for some creative ideas about how to pull Crimean youth into Ukrainian humanitarian space. Talking about politics, that's not the politics, the policy of the Ministry of Education, but that's Verkhovna Rada, that's the law that does not allow us as the Ministry of Education to do something different when people come with requests, and we help them. But there was not a single case when people would come to us for assistance and we wouldn't help. But that way we do not address the problem. Maybe MPs should sit together from different factions and think about how to move forward. Maybe we need to pass some special law on our strategy about Crimea, about the children who are there. Many of them can feel themselves Ukrainian even now, but the next generations, there's a big risk that they will grow up having no understanding. Well, there's an awful statistics. On the territory of Crimea, there were 624,000 ethnic Ukrainians, but in October 2014, Ukraine had their own illegal censorship and census, and they said that 300 plus thousand Ukrainians lived there. Where did the 300,000 disappeared? And what's happening in Russia? More than 1 million ethnic Ukrainians disappeared. They started registering them as Russians. We just need to audit all the ideas possible. We need to organize some brainstorming session. We need to start working on that, because, and then later settle it at the legislative level, or maybe introduce some changes to the law, or maybe pass some special law which would allow us to, in a simpler way, get Crimean youth included into Ukrainian space.
Well, you don't even have to change the law or amend it, as far as the question is how to help Crimeans to enter the higher educational establishments. In Ukraine, there was such a experience, the program of interaction and cooperation of universities in Western Ukraine and Crimea. Then there were quotas at the state expense in Western Ukrainian universities. There were commissions, and there was a internal resolution, and the competition commission went to Crimea. There was a competition, and they got those places. So now the state has saved some budget places, something like 9,000 places for education of Crimeans. Let's not just make new laws. The deputy minister says that we do not recognize Crimean documents. I'm talking about the fact that Crimeans who will go through external tests, they are competing between themselves. Like we have 9,000 places for free education of Crimeans, and they have vanished somewhere. Let's provide 2,000 or 3,000 for them. And the Crimeans will know that, for instance, in the Kiev State University, National University, there are 5 places for them. They will compete between themselves. We do not want to drag everyone here, but this quota system worked well in 2005, 2006, and there was really an influx of entrants from Crimea. Today, for over 23 years of the Ukrainian independence, the Ministry of Education has not created a single Ukrainian language educational establishment in Crimea. So now let's make the Tavrisky National University in exile. Let's set it up in Kherson. Let's renew its activity and show the example. The more so that we do not remove the issue of annexation. We work to come back to Crimea. Yes, I do support this, and I do agree with the idea of moving the Tavrisky National University to Kherson, same as we suggested should be done to Tavria Football Club, and now we see that it will happen. And now I give the floor to Valentyna Potapova, who is coordinator of the educational programs of the Almenda Civil Awareness Center, who are members of the Crimean Field Mission, whose activity was banned on the territory of the Russian Federation. So what do you think? Do we need quotas in the universities for Crimeans? And out of your experience, what suggestions do you have to solve this issue? And first, Almenda is not in the Crimean Field Mission, and this is very important, because if we talk about Olga Skripnik, well, oh yes, I was confused. Olga Skripnik is a member of the Crimean Field Mission, but the organization is not. When we're talking about Crimean education, we actually lose the picture of a kid about whom we talk. Yesterday, I Wybird Crimea, and my students gathered together because my daughter is there, and they played the Game of Thrones. They were very jolly, they laughed, and I said, I'm very happy that I saw your photo session with the Ukrainian flag on the 24th and 23rd of August. And they said, it was so pleasant for us when our friends in one of the social networks, our friends from all over Ukraine sent us photos with Ukrainian flags. Our friends from Odessa, from Carpathians, from Dnipropetrovsk, we understood that we are not abandoned here. So when we talk about humanitarian policy, we should understand for whom this is. This is for those kids who are very afraid to feel that they are abandoned. When we talked to a journalist who is here, he said that he connected to kids through social networks, and they said that they just didn't know that they were allowed to join Ukrainian universities. They did not know that they are not considered traitors, that they are not rejected. So the problem is also that we may have emphasized that there are traitors in Crimea and they are not ours. We should start with the statement that you are ours, you are a kin, and that we care about you, and more so that 191,000 students were left in the dire straits, and they have the right to education, and the state of Ukraine is obliged to provide them with an opportunity to study. We are not talking here about singular cases, we're talking about creation of the mechanism of mass education for Crimeans. So when we do offer a distance remote education, online education. Technically, this is rather complicated. When we meet representatives of the ministry, we have, set ourselves. I was studying very long ago when everyone knew what program minimum and program maximum is. So we set ourselves a minimal task to create a mechanism, if not for the full online education, but simplified remote education for 2016. Now I have two addresses and appeals which disturb me a lot. First of them is a mom of a 10th grader who graduated from the school in Crimea, tried to get him involved remotely into an international Ukrainian school. And the director answered that we cannot accept you to a Ukrainian school because you are not a foreigner. So there's a paradox. Here you can join because you are a Ukrainian, but in another case you cannot join because you have some other documents other than Ukrainian. So we should do, first of all, although people already have refusals, you should change the clause on the International Ukrainian School where you have to include just one phrase, foreigners and also residents of the occupied territories. Just put this in and directors and teachers will forget that they get into an unpleasant situation. Secondly, the online education. We, in reality, our entire public and the Ministry of Education have very little time, 1.5 months at the most, because we have to provide for the education online in the budget, and our MPs should vote for this. If this is not by the 1st of January next year, then we'll be standing without any movement. So the first task is the budget. And what I want to say more, we have very good relations with the education ministry. We're moving in the single direction, but let's not be sly about the figures that you've shown. 363 residents of Crimea entered the Ukrainian education universities. And there's a mistake. There's no level of junior specialist. It's called now junior bachelor. Then 207 and 500 plus, 543, I guess. In reality, they are masters who have joined the master's degree now. Those who joined 4 years ago, when Ukraine was single, without any occupied territories, and they are now just continuing the education. So no one has left Crimea, maybe up to 10 people. 207 who have registration in Crimea. I have Crimean registration in my passport. But among those 207, are they IDPs with Crimean registration, or those who have moved from Crimea long ago? Yes, the figure 963 is an invented figure. We lost this campaign. I went to the site of the Ministry of Education of Crimea, and they said they have a document, a special order of entering Russian universities for Crimeans. There's a document where every Crimean may go and read what they can do. can we publish at least a letter from the ministry where they will assemble everything that was adopted by the ministry? You may call it some peculiarities or specialities for the entrance campaign for Crimea and occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk region. And then this person who is in Crimea, and we are talking about Bilogorsk and Zhenkoy districts. Okay, Sevastopol and Yalta and Simferopol are progressive, but we have rural areas where a mom should find this information, but believe me, it will be very difficult for her to find it.
Yes, everything's right, correct. We are moving in the same direction. We have the same understanding. And we as the ministry, we are not the entity that can address all the problems. But if we do what you are talking about, we need to change legislation, because we need to have the mechanism of recognizing that a person has this status. That is to be regulated at the legislative level. Someone writes email, I am such and such person, I reside there, I live on the occupied territory, I want to study there. We need to have some mechanism to verify that that's this person. We need to simplify it, I agree. Let us maybe have per 1,000 normal children, there will be 2-3 cheatings, but 1,000 children will enter. It should be simplified as much as possible. I understand now there's an meeting which will start in the Ministry of Finance, and we're requesting to get money for this content for online education. In principle, we need it, not just for Crimea, but for the country, so the children from villages in Khmelnytsk region, for example, have access to the content of education. That's an example. Well, just an example. I agree absolutely that step number one is to have money in the budget. As soon as we get money in the budget, then we'll be able to set up some task force to implement it quickly. And second step, I don't know how quickly we can do it and what way to follow. Maybe we should do it via the government, or maybe we should have the group of MPs who will start working on that, or maybe some other. But we need to introduce some legislative changes. The best way is if those people from Crimea, like you, who know the problem very well, could describe how you see it as the document. If you need some lawyers, we can get them. We do have lawyers, but there's no draft law. If you could say all these, we have all these ideas, and here's the draft law, and tomorrow we'll start promoting it via Cabinet of Ministers or the Parliament. We need to have something specific and come with this specific thing. No one can do it better than people who know about this problem. One thing I would like to say about the methods. We made a request, and at the moment of occupation of Crimea, 136 million hryvnias were saved because the stipends were not paid to students. There were 18 universities that were maintained by the state budget. 18 universities, these are buildings, lighting, water, premises, payment to the people who work there, and this money disappeared in 2014. If we were said that, okay, that was used to stop military aggression, we would say, okay, great, that's clear, but we were not even explained, were not even told where the money disappeared. We say, please give back the money that were allocated for Crimea in 2014. This will be enough to launch the programs. Thank you, Andriy Shchekun. I would like to add, you mentioned 543.
I'd like to add 543, official figures, and yes, I know, there was criticism. You know, there is a official figure, according to our request, in 2014, 8.5 students have transferred from Crimean universities to, yes, and in 2015, regrettably, the mechanism was not introduced by the ministry. There's not a single fact that kids did transfer from Crimean universities, although their diplomas in Crimea do not give them anything. So last year, everything was introduced and almost 90,000 people used this. About 543 who joined the paid form of education. There's an official statistics. I'd like to be more precise here. Mrs. Potapova said rightly, are those kids from Crimea or kids of IDPs? Because there's a law now that regulates for the IDP kids, there's special places provided for by the ministry. However, the Cabinet of Ministers did not answer us. They only said that the Ministry of Education should develop the mechanism of for such kids of joining education at beneficial conditions. And as of today, the entrance campaign is already over. But the ministry has not yet published this mechanism. And my question is, if there are internally displaced persons among those 543, could they use their benefit and transfer to free education? So questions from journalists, and please tell us who you are. I will come to you with a mic. As far as the statistics, in Crimean, about the statistics, my question is to public organizations. Do you know about the fate of those children? And you know there's a rather huge discrepancy between those who graduated from schools and those who passed the exams. What do those kids do who have not sat through exams? I don't quite understand this. You mean Crimeans who have not joined Russian or Ukrainian universities? Yes, those who did not sit exams. According to the data published on the 25,000 applications were filed this year, and there's the same rule as in Ukraine. One graduate may apply to 5 universities, and psychologically they do file 5 applications, so out of 4,500 graduates, almost 5,000 have applied for Crimean universities. Maybe this is an invented figure. Okay, so probably this is 7,000. And the question is where the kids went who do not enter any university. You know, this mistrust and disbelief that and mass joblessness that is appearing in Crimea makes graduates look for other ways of self-realization, not through higher education, but through getting profession. So today in Crimea there's a lot of applications for vocational schools and courses. This is true. Because, for instance, the Yalta vocational school is asking for additional places from the Ministry of Education in Crimea because so many kids went there. Roman Ostapchuk, Free Crimea Project. The question is to experts and the ministry. What do you know about Crimean Tatar language and Crimean Tatar philology, whether it is being taught anywhere in Ukrainian universities now? And there's information in the media that the project of Kiev Mohyla Academy, they plan to organize Crimean studies. What this is and whether they help IDPs from Crimea and Crimeans on the continental part of Ukraine in general. Was this to everyone? I don't have detailed information at the moment. I am not ready to dwell on this in detail, but this is a very interesting information. I'll inquire about it. Well, there used to be 14 schools with Crimean Tatar language of the education. They still function there, and there's a department of Crimean Tatar philology at the Kiev National University, and I can't tell you anything about Crimean studies. I can tell you that when the Crimean Tatar language department opened at the university in Kiev, there were only 9 applications, but then there was a massive information campaign, and within 2 days they got 253 applications. A lot depends on journalists, on how you cover the initiatives that there are, on what is being offered by universities, and everyone is with satellite dish in Crimea now. It is impossible to watch what is being shown there on air, and that's why a lot of people buy satellite dishes and watch Ukrainian TV, and in reality there's very few people who principally do not watch the Ukrainian TV.
My question is to the representative of the Ministry of Education. I asked the question last month when there was a round table in Ukraine format. My question is again about the law of Ukraine, 425 Prim 8. That is the one that introduces amendments to other laws of Ukraine, and that's about some privileges for entering in studies for children who have the status of IDPs. The Cabinet of Ministers replied to our information request that the Ministry of Education has to develop the draft regulation about that program that would describe the terms of getting the privileges. And I would like to know, as far as I know that law, we need to have this program in the beginning of, we had to have it in the beginning of August. What is the status of this regulation, and what are the agencies were involved into developing this regulation, what were their proposals, and what eventually we will have. The status is simple, looking for money, because that is the state program which provides for privileges. Privileges mean money, and the Ministry of Education doesn't decide on doesn't plan the money. It's the Ministry of Finance, but to talk to the Ministry of Finance we need to make very detailed calculations about how many of these people will need privileges, how many children, orphans or IDPs we will have. Can we say that exactly? So practically now that's the stage of developing this program, and we're getting closer to identifying how many of such people we may have to provide these calculations to the Ministry of Finance. In 2015, there was not a single kopic allocated for that in the state budget, so now we have big chances to find money for that in 2016. Those children who entered this year, and what could be the practical advice given to children and parents who entered, what should they be doing, and who are paying for the education? Should they have the agreements to provide them to the Ministry of Education so that that these expenditures are recovered? So basically, my advice would be to any person to save, to collect, to save these receipts and contracts, because there might be any situation. So we believe that if this program starts working, we hope that this will happen. The law has been passed, and there is the situation when the law is passed, and no one understands when the law is being passed how it will work, how the money will be found for that, and then the ministry which is responsible for that has to find money quickly and do everything in a month. But this doesn't happen this way. It doesn't happen that the law is passed and in the month we have the state program all funded. These are just wishes. So we want this to have this program. We are working on that, and our vision is it should cover all people, all young people who basically are included into these categories. How soon will we be able to find money for this program? I have no answer to that. Today, I hope that is just a detail. Today, not today, but at the previous meeting of the government, we adopted an important resolution which allows the universities to put money on deposits. That's very important. But the resolution about use of current accounts for own revenues, that is not the law. That is just the resolution, and we hope that we'll do it quickly, but I cannot tell you the time frame. We wanted to start working in 2016. We have 5 minutes left, and there are 2 questions, and the answer, please provide it within 2 minutes. Today's briefing is very important. I know that the IDPs from Crimea, the activists, had many meetings about that, but so that it's with the participation of the Ministry of Education. I'm for the first time present at that, and I'm heading the Crimean Society of Shevchenko. We lost Crimea, we are losing Donbass, and that is because we did not really appreciate the patriotic education and the educational programs. I've been living in Crimea for 60 years, and I've been working on Ukrainian issues even back in Soviet times, but there was no attention paid to Ukrainian language education. We need, the Crimean children are to be rescued, because after the Russian kindergarten, after the primary Russian school, we will lose these children. I believe in Kherson region we need to organize boarding schools. Tavrisky National University should be renewed and should be moved to Ukrainian territory, because Ukraine lost those children who entered Russian universities. The Rikulikov Public Radio. Is there any statistics where the Ukrainian language and Crimean Tatar language are taught as the subject in schools in Crimea? That's first question. And the second, which bank is recommended by to the universities for deposits? Talking about deposits, these are only state banks, and we have just 3 of them, 3 state banks. We agree with what you mentioned. Yes, that was the conscious policy. It wasn't accidental that the language wasn't taught. Talking about statistical data, probably it's there, but we do have it for the times when we were controlling these territories. What is happening now? We don't have any definite statistical data. We can just find it out via some informal channel. Talking about Crimean Tatar language, 14 schools with Crimean Tatar language. These schools are still there. The Crimean Tatar language is taught as in the past, but they have only 37, maybe 40 schools where Ukrainian language is taught, and in the majority of schools, this is like the subject which is not in the curriculum, like additional. The Ukrainian language teachers, they are now teaching Russian. And there's not a single Ukrainian language teaching school. We collect data using our statistics, and there's some sort of additional statistics, and we have not reacted. Maybe the law enforcement bodies should react to that, or maybe the Ministry of Education, but the education, the sphere of education is now there in Russian Federation. Maybe the Ministry of Education has to submit the claim to the general prosecutors so that they pay attention that there are no Ukrainian language schools. There are some, we need to react somehow to what's happening in Crimea via the prosecutor's office of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. 1 second. Pay attention that the question is very good, but there's no answer from the Ministry of Education. Every time we are trying to get some answers from the Ministry of Education, how many applied, how many are registered, how many schools are there. Andriy said, yes, we are doing it. We are monitoring the websites of Crimea. We are monitoring everything they have there. We have a file on our desks, and we follow the situation in Crimea. We understand we will return there. But the question is, does the Ministry of Education plan to go back there? If you're planning, then let you have some specialists who will do the same work that we are doing. I thank you so much for that, but let's do it together. You understand the situation very well. What I don't like, when you start saying the ministry is like that and we are like that. You know what ministry is? You know the Department of the Higher Education in the ministry is 21 persons. Which 3 floors? The whole Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine is 325 people. In Finland, they also have 300 people in the Ministry of Education. What are we talking about? I would have set up the whole department that would be working only on the issues of IDPs, that would be working on the issues of Crimea. But I cannot do that because I have limited personnel. But we can do it, because I say we cannot do it. It doesn't mean that we will not be doing it. We'll be doing it when we are talking about it. But I don't want during the next press conference in a month, in a week, in half a year, and we discuss it again. Andriy, what you've done now, let's organize it. If you need the meeting with the minister, I will organize it. Let us develop these proposals. Let's.
And we may realize those proposals and draft laws and resolutions of the Cabinet of the Ministers, not just expressing our good intentions and desires. This has to acquire legal form, and we will work. And by the way, a very interesting thing, over the last 2 weeks, you know, there's attention to education before the 1st of September. We have adopted 11 resolutions on the education by the Cabinet of Ministers. This is a very high indicator, and now our time is up. I'm sure that the project Free Crimea will link Andriy Shchekun with Minister Quit, and I think that there's no better candidate to head the Department of Education for occupied territories. I undertake the obligation to lobby the issue as I can. Of course, if Valentyna is not against, and we see that public organizations are very efficient, and we need their criticism to change the policy. Thank you very much. It was very interesting discussion, and see you next time.